Take your seat. All right, everybody, we have hit quorum, and it is 6:30, so we're going to get started. So first off, welcome back. I hope you all enjoyed the week off and a great reunion and homecoming weekend. As many of you may know, we have a guest here tonight, so without further ado, I'd like to turn the floor over to Dean Schill, who's going to speak about universal access policy in the residence halls.
Okay, Kyle, thanks. Universal access, I guess that's a hot topic. So let me back up and explain a little bit to you how universal access came about, why we turned it off, and what we've turned back on. So I'm the person in the administration responsible for universal access, so let's get that clear right up front. I got the idea from another college campus. I brought it to RPI 3 years ago. I thought it'd be really good because about 3 years ago we were having a lot of problems with doors being propped to residence halls. I thought it'd be really good to enhance class and programming with staff doing a lot of program development in the residence hall. Sometimes it's difficult to get the programs. So I thought that would be good. I thought it would be really good for students studying and being able to go from one residence hall to another for study groups or meeting your friends, what have you. And also we were trying to encourage faculty to bring programs, seminars, classes to the residence halls. So I was trying to make it easier for faculty to get into our halls. So those are some of the reasons why I thought it was a good concept. And so what we did 3 years ago, I presented it to the residence life staff. Some of them pushed back. They didn't like it. It was new. They thought there'd be more vandalism in the residence halls. And so when I talked with Dr. Sams about it and talked with Roger Johnson, who was then the director of public safety, we decided let's do a pilot and see how that works. And so we did a pilot up on the hill with several residence halls. This was 3 years ago, and that seemed to work well. I guess that was 2 years ago. So after that work, then I went to back to Dr. Sams and Mr. Johnson, and I said, well, that seemed to work. Do you think we can expand it to the remainder of the residence halls? And so that's what we did last year, and it seemed to work okay last year. And then we got to this year, and we had the incident in Gray where a room on the first floor and a room on the second floor was violated by intruders, people who were non-RPI students. They haven't been apprehended yet, but their picture's been displayed all over the place. And that brought into question the whole concept of universal access. And I kind of agree with the questioning, because first and foremost, I think the most important thing in the residence halls is to provide really good safety of all of our students and residents. And we probably had perhaps gotten a little bit lax as to who was accessing our halls. So we've done a number of things when we turned off universal access. Obviously that caused a lot of inconvenience for students. And so we started doing a review of everybody who needed access from a programmatic point of view. That's why we turned it back on Friday during the day of Friday. For all students who are on dining plans, and so they could once again access all the dining facilities. I reviewed a list of staff who had access, and I removed a number of staff who were on that list because I didn't think that they needed it. A number of faculty have been removed. And really any student or student group that doesn't make sense to us has been removed. So Does that mean we won't add back some groups or other people to it? No, not necessarily, but it will be reviewed with more scrutiny than perhaps it was before. And again, our ultimate goal is to have our residence halls be safe. And so I'm going to do everything that needs to be done administratively and organizationally to make sure that happens. So I'll stop there and I'll respond to any questions that anybody might have.
So we're gonna open a queue. I want to remind you guys, because this is a bit of a hot button issue, keep things civil. Dean Chill is here as our guest and deserves our fullest respect.
Okay, so Justin?
Two questions for you, Dean Schill. The first off is related specifically to the quadrangle. As of right now, what I understand is that quad is separated into two components, quad 1 and quad 2.
Right.
I'm a resident of quad 2. Is there any way that there can be a review in terms of making quad 1 unified system, especially considering the only common area that students really use is Hunt 1, which is quad 1. So quad 2 students have nowhere to study other than public areas. Furthermore, RSA in particular, I'm part of the hall council for quad, and it's really difficult to put up posters in quad 1, which is part of our residence hall, if we don't have access. Is there any way that could be looked into?
So let me just verify this. And you said you're in quad 2?
Correct.
And do all of you in quad 2 have access to one another?
Correct.
Okay. So your question is, can quad 1 and 2 cross over? I don't know the answer to that, but I'll bring that up as part of the review and see if we can do that. The second part of your question about programmatic space, I've actually talked with the administration about when we start doing renovations in the quad, which we hope to start this summer. I'd like to build in some programmatic space if possible
That'd be fantastic.
to address that critical issue. That doesn't answer your question immediately, but we're aware of the problem in the quad. So let me work on part 1 of that first.
Okay.
And
The second question I had for you was regards to specifically elections and campaigning. I know with sometimes some of the candidates have seen it fit to go door to door and speak with potential voters to see if they'd like to vote. Is there any possible way that in general a student could come to? Is there any person that the student could come to and request a case by case basis access to a dorm on a temporary on a need basis and for a temporary limited amount of time?
the answer to that, like right today, is no. And that's part of the overall review. Like when I was listening to your question, Justin, about elections, I was also thinking about dorm storming. That's what the Greeks call it. When they do that in September, another problem. And then case by case. Right now, this is my general answer to that, and that is you need to utilize the guest policy. So you need to identify somebody who lives in that residence hall, wants to invite you in as a guest. It's going to take responsibility for you as a guest, and that would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Cody?
You said it was non-RPI students, right?
Yes,
So
that's what we think.
Okay, so how does that have to do with the universal access? If they're non-RPI students, they wouldn't have access to the buildings.
Well, they got in the residence hall, so let's assume that they tailgated in.
Okay.
So somebody didn't take responsibility for the safety of that residence hall and letting somebody who they couldn't even identify follow them in the residence hall.
So it isn't necessarily, it wasn't necessarily a result of the universal access. It was just kind of a precautionary that you're taking now just because of the result, because of what happened?
Yeah, I mean, probably in your eyes, it could, I guess, be viewed as an overreaction. I don't view it that way. I view it as our ultimate goal is to keep our residence halls safe, keep our campus safe, to keep our borders safe, because we had 2 incidents over the weekend where students, were apprehended by people. And I have to say, I flew to California this weekend, took the red eye back last night. When I left at 4:30 to go to the airport Saturday morning, I saw one of our students walking down 15th by himself with his head down, totally not able to defend himself. That doesn't make any sense to me. We had an incident over the weekend, a student walking from campus back to his fraternity way over on Pauline Avenue. That doesn't make any sense to me. So my whole point is, all of us as a university community have to do more to make our total environment safer.
Mason?
Okay, I have 2 things. First, Sharp, Nugent, and Warren are grouped together by Res Life as a common area. And so Res Life events will occur in the different halls. And also, I believe Nugent only has 2 washing machines and 2 dryers, so they have to use Sharp's laundry facilities. But yet, complete building access, including access to the Sharp basement, has been cut off. Previously, we only had access to the Sharp basement, and we still have key access through the tunnel that connects the 2 buildings, but we do not have access to the doors. And also for Res Life events, it may become an issue if our hall council is putting on an event in one of the residence halls, getting other people to come to this. That may be something that you guys should consider,
Right.
Especially since you do group this as a common group of residence halls.
And you all use the laundry and Sharp?
Yes.
Also? Okay.
Yes, just because the Nugent one's smaller. And then it only has 2
I will
machines.
mention this, if any of you are part of Ground Zero, that's going to be part of the review as to who has access, because I tend to think that more guests from the outside come to Ground Zero events, and we need to study that, look at that, and perhaps make it more restrictive. I don't know, but we're going to review it real quickly.
And then my second thing was that I was a freshman last year, so I came here and I've only ever experienced universal access before. In that time, I've never had someone try to piggyback or try to tailgate in after me. And since universal access was cut off, I've had it happen several times, and I know other students that have told me similar things, where because there's no more universal access, students are trying to follow more students in because they're used to being able to go to the buildings and they can't, which then puts the student in a position where they have to confront these people that may or may not be outsiders, which may put the student more directly at risk. Normally those students, or those would be RPI students, and you could just ask for an ID or something, but that may put you in a situation where you're asking someone who's there with malicious intent, and you say, hey, can you show me your RPI ID? And then they act on you in some way to force you to let them in. And it puts students in that position where they have to constantly be questioning, whereas with universal access, anyone who's an RPI student and is supposed to be in the dorms or lives in one of the residence halls is able to get in, which drastically reduces the number of people that have to piggyback, which hopefully makes things easier on the students that live in the dorm and the students that are visiting the dorm. And I was just...
Okay. As you heard me say at the beginning,
Yeah.
I kind of endorsed that concept at one point in time.
Please.
My question was asked.
Paul?
One of the concerns that I had was just, especially for freshman courses, there's ALAC tutoring in the different halls that kind of rotates around with, like, every week classes like IEA will be in one residence hall's lounge. I know that last year Physics 1 and Physics 2 TAs and mentors were in my lounge, so it's kind of like you have to go to that lounge and be able to get in to get the mentoring, since it's only in that one specific hall one night of each week.
Right.
And since one of the main parts of the Institute's class initiative is trying to get students to live together and work together on stuff, I kind of am just worried that this will deter students from being able to try to work together on stuff or being able to access resources. Since I know myself, like, last year, every week I'd go to I lived in Hull Hall, and I'd go to Barton to work with some of my friends on my homework for my CAD class. And if they weren't able to access me, one of 3 people would have to like go up the staircase, come and let me in, rather than me just being able to go to them, which makes some more sense since it's like a whole group of people coming together, and I happen to be the one friend who was in a different hall.
Right.
Because you don't necessarily know at the beginning of scheduling your classes who I can't try to schedule, especially first semester, all my classes to have classes with my hall mates. Wow. So you won't necessarily be able to have people who have the same professors or the same work or issues as you do.
Right. I agree. It's more of an inconvenience. Give you an example though, like the train club meets in Davidson. And so members of the train club who don't live in Davidson need to be invited as a guest in the Davidson Hall if they still want to meet there. So it's more of an inconvenience, but hopefully it's a better control mechanism because your members of your club are coming, you expect them, you're at the front door waiting for them. And so it builds in more hurdles, I guess, from some point of view, but hopefully it'll make it safer.
Jenna?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that I have seen, going off what Mason said,
Mhm.
a lot more cases of piggybacking. And if you do question to yourself whether or not this person is a member of RPI and if they are not trying to steal something from your dorm, I feel like it just decreases the trust that we have on campus in general.
Okay.
Lexi?
So I see you're taking all these notes, Dean Schill, about our comments, and I'm just wondering if there's areas that you'd like to have student input as you're evaluating some, places that students might be able to regain access.
I always like to have student input, and I share what your opinions are with my colleagues in administration. Does that always create change? No. Will that always, revert back to an original policy? Not necessarily. But to me, your opinions are extremely valuable. You also you point out strengths and weaknesses in whatever we're doing, and so that's in residence life anyway. That's how we hope to improve, by hearing your voices, and so I'm never opposed to that. When other administrators of mine, ask me what students think, then I can always answer them much more directly, exactly how you feel about things. So, be it if you agree with me or disagree with me, that never offends me.
And could I just ask just a really quick follow-up? Is there like a deadline you'd like student input by, if we were to give you some?
There's no deadline in this program. With our ultimate goal of, the best safety measures we can incorporate, to me, that's an ongoing challenge.
Shoshana?
I have 2 general topics I'd like to discuss.
Uh-huh.
The first is in relation to the campus crime statistics that public safety reports on every year. Specifically, they haven't reported on 2014 yet, but looking at a trend over the last couple years, it has been relatively low except for 2012, which had 17 on-campus burglaries. In reaction to that, what sort of measures did Residence Life and Public Safety use to decrease the number of burglaries? Because since then we haven't seen such an uptick.
I think the 2014 report is out, but I can't quote you the numbers. Do you know if I'm pretty sure it's out.
I believe there was an issue.
I can send that to somebody electronically if you want to see it, because I'm almost certain somebody sent it to me last week. To me, answering your question specifically about, be it if it's robberies or theft or, apprehending one or more of our students either in or near a residence hall, I view it all under the umbrella of safety. And so no matter what we do and whatever measures that you propose or I propose or anybody else, as long as it makes our residence hall environment and campus safer, I'm all for it.
And real quick, Shoshana, Gina has a point of information.
I believe the 17 burglaries in 2012 were a result of burglaries in wraps that happened over Christmas break. And what happened is when they got into a single wrap, it counted as 4 because they broke into all 4 rooms, so it was higher in the crime statistic. And following that, they replaced all the locks on the windows that spring, and then since then they've even replaced the windows now.
So then, just as a general follow-up to that, I would hope that, like, as you mentioned with quad renovations over the summer, other residence halls are getting preventative maintenance for their locks and general upkeep. But the second point I wanted to ask about was the Student Life program, Opening Doors. Are you continuing that? How will you handle that? Will you give staff temporary access? Because the purpose of that program is to introduce the staff to the students who don't know them. And so if I'm a student and I don't have universal access and I see some strange adult trying to come into my residence hall, I certainly would question that if I didn't know the staff.
Right. That's a good question. We haven't really talked about that. One way I will propose to the professional staff that we handle that is something like 19 deans still have access to the residence halls. And those 19 deans are all on-call people. They're part of the crisis intervention team, and so they have to be able to access any residence hall. And so perhaps we could match a dean with a faculty member, and so they would have access that way. And or we may ask some of our residence life staff to get more involved with Opening Doors in the future.
Kyle?
Just a quick question, because this hasn't been asked yet. What was residence life concerns regarding the first iteration of establishment for universal access? You mentioned that there was some resistance from staff members.
Residence life staff, their number one concern was vandalism. For instance, they argued with me that Barton would lose more couches and chairs and tables and everything else that tends to disappear from the study rooms. They also were afraid 3 years ago of more damage to walls and defacement of the building, that kind of thing. And we didn't realize that. So that fear by some of the residence life staff dissipated, I guess. And then when we did the pilot, I think that helped sort of build their confidence and trust in it. So it's just interesting to me that, when I introduced the concept, I would say the residence life staff at that point in time was probably 50-50 split. And then not until they saw how it really performed were they interested in having it expand. And I rely a lot on the residence life staff. There's 99 RAs, RDs, LAs, and to me, they know best sort of the pulse of what's going on in residence halls. So I listen to them all the time.
Stephen?
I'm just kind of curious as to where you see like the long-term solution, or which direction you see a long-term solution going. There's obviously a lot of grievances that need to still be addressed. There's a lot of, I guess, like smaller hurdles, but do you see a long-term solution more on the side of like no universal access or closer to what we had before?
I don't see us going back to universal access as we knew it. I see us moving towards access with better control. And what I mean by that is, in my position, I want to know like who's entering our residence halls and who's exiting them. I want to know what doors are coming through. I want to know what doors are being propped, what alarms are going off. and I want to know what we need to do to make our halls safer. For instance, I was talking with Lexi about this last week. This is starting to happen in other housing programs where campuses are changing the access to student rooms. And so you can use your smartphone and new technology to access your room door. Well, on the one hand, that might be really convenient, and on another hand, it may give us more information as to who's going in and out of your room, but then on the other hand, you might not want us to know that. So, you know, there are a lot of critical issues related to safety, but I hope as we utilize more technology on our campus, that will move towards appropriate access with appropriate control.
Okay, thank you.
Justin?
Hello again, Dean Schul. With respect to safety of the residence halls and in terms of monitoring who's going in and out of the residence halls, I worked with a ID system in my high school, and I know that the system that they used was able to give very, very, very detailed information in terms of who, when, where, why, not why, but who and where are going into the dorms, and I don't know if wouldn't that solve the issue of who was going into of tracking who was going into the residence halls? And I have a follow-up as well.
Well, it will if, you know, you have everybody coming through one door, that you're collecting that data and that information, and nobody can access other doors in or out. Some campuses have, well, I know one campus that literally has public safety at the front door of every hall, but that's because of the city environment that they're in. I know of many other campuses that have very active desk programs. They have a front desk, they have a monitor at that desk. And then I'm thinking of another university that has not only a desk program, but then they have a palm reader. So when you go into the residence hall, you have to put your palm on the identification plate, and they actually read your palm, and then you can access the residence hall. So there are a lot of campuses that have a lot more controls than we do. Do I want to make our residence halls prisons? No, I don't want to promote that kind of feeling at all. But I do want to promote like a real sense of community within our residence halls where all residents, not just some, but all residents are taking responsibility for not only their personal safety, but the safety of everybody else who lives in that residence hall.
So, and then the follow-up to that would be, it's not so much related, but it's also related to security in that I've also looked into whether or not there are cameras located anywhere outside of the residence halls for various reasons. I was very, very, very shocked and scared to find that there are absolutely no cameras monitoring any part of the quad, according to public safety. There are also no cameras on parts of Freshman Hill. And wouldn't that be a very primary direction to take the discussion of safety, as in with quad, if you have someone entering a stack, it would be if someone's stealing a TV, you'd like to be able to look at the camera and see them walking out with a TV. But if you don't have a camera, you can't really do that. And when you have so many people going in and out of a residence hall, especially when you have stacks that are connected at the top, so people could go in one way and come out the other.
Could be a great alternative method. I forget the number, but Roger Johnson told me at one time how many cameras we have on this campus. It's a lot more than we think. But I think your comment about how many in the residence halls is probably more accurate. If we do have more, I'm not aware of them.
Marcus?
In terms of how to address students that have to, as we said, investigate people that are trying to piggyback into them, and people may be, for whatever circumstances, forgetting a key or trying to get in to a friend who's on his way down or whatnot, do you have any plans for how to give students an idea of how to actually address the situation? Because I know there's going to be a lot of students, this was brought up earlier, that aren't going to know how to handle this. So are there any programs in plan to avoid profiling that may occur?
I think we have to do a better, well, I won't say better, I think we have to enhance sort of our educational efforts in the residence halls in getting all students on board with safety issues and taking care of their particular community. That's a hard challenge, but I think, the more we're constantly educating and promoting that this is really important to the university campus, I hope that gets absorbed. Can we educate with better specifics? I think so. And I think, how we go about identifying people might be helpful. That's a good question. I worry about our own students at the front door challenging people who don't look like, RPI students, however you identify that. Because these intruders look like college students, And so it's difficult sometimes to figure out, like, who do you question and so forth. I think probably the best answer is, if you don't know somebody who's following you into that building, you ought to be asking them who they are and asking for identification. It's your hall. If you're accessing your hall and you don't know somebody who's following you in, I think it's appropriate to ask them who they are and could they show you their ID.
Mason?
Of the friends that I have at schools that don't have universal access, many of them offer alternatives. So like looking at Ohio State, which I'm from Ohio, so I know people from there. But looking at that, they actually have universal access during the day. Then at night, they have people on staff 24/7 that are able to escort students in. So that way there are people that are trained and prepared to do things like that. But they also have a booth and a place to actually sit and be safe in case there is an intruder. And they're paid, so that would be another issue. But is there any...
Like Blitman.
Like Blitman.
Right.
Blitman does that? Actually...
9 o'clock, we have security from 9 o'clock until 5 o'clock the next morning.
Oh, interesting.
That's the front desk.
Yeah, it's definitely something similar to that. But the thing is that they provide that alternative for students, which makes it easy for actual students to get in, and it makes it more difficult for people who aren't students to access the campus as well. But in this case, the alternative, no universal access, feels like it's still just, there isn't an alternative yet to help students get into the residence halls without proving itself to be that inconvenience that it is so far for students, and also putting students in that position where they do have to question who is who.
Well, you have to, and I don't say this defensively, so don't misinterpret this, but you have to remember 2 years ago, nobody knew about universal access. So there are ways to get in to see your friends and to study and to participate in programming and that kind of thing. Are there more inconveniences compared to what you've known as universal access? Yes, seemingly so. It's not as easy. But again, if our ultimate goal is to keep our halls safe, and if in fact that does occur, then that's what I'm for.
Paul?
I had 2 points. One is that just bring up some feedback that I had from some other students. It's kind of like some people were just with the general frustration about the things, with sort of the best way I can express the idea is that a mind that's been expanded can never go back to its original constraints with now people are comfortable and used to having this program, and everybody who it's mandatory to live on campus with the sophomores and freshmen, their entire time at RPI have previously had universal access. And just some people are just annoyed about it and talking about, well, we may as well just to be pushed back, just prop the doors open and let anybody in, just because it's kind of everybody's in the same annoying boat, so we may as well help everybody out. And with how nobody knows who actually let the people into Bray, the fact that it may have been people who lived in that hall who may have made the mistake, which the idea of only allowing people who live in that hall to access it wouldn't really do anything to prevent it. And the second point that I had was kind of something that somebody already touched on with the whole profiling and the fact that people are going to have to essentially question people who are near them or behind them at halls. It's like, there are a lot of different halls, like since I lived in Hall last year, I know that if you're trying to swipe into the main entrance, you physically can't be within reaching distance of the door really, and using the card swiper. So somebody else could very easily just like, if you're going over to swipe, open the door and go in before you could, just because that's the like way the proximity kit is set up. And also there's the fact that it's like, I'm gonna be honest, people like, these were people who know me and people who like know who I am have already been joking like, yeah, Paul, we're gonna need to see that your ID before you get into the building, you fit the demographic of people, blah, 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 because, well, I look like what I look like. And some people will be necessarily, I guess, anxious or overcautious about the fact that it's like they could feel awkward for whatever reason, while previously it's just like if they feel odd about it, it's just like I swiped in, they're like, oh, whoops.
Okay.
Gina?
A few minutes ago, you mentioned that you wanted to be able to keep tabs on people and know where they were going, which is something that I support. But why would restricting universal access help keep better tabs on where people are going? Because if someone's holding the door open for someone else, you don't get the swipe, you don't get it into your system that that's where they're going. Like if I go from Hall to Crockett to study with my physics friends, you wouldn't know that I'm going to Crockett because my friend is going to hold the door for me.
Yeah, but hopefully your friend, is inviting you as a guest into their hall. So that friend hopefully is taking responsibility for you being in that hall. That's the way I would look at that. Versus when we had universal access, did we have a recording of who accessed that front door? Yes. So to me, just sort of the personal detail and attention of you inviting your friend or friends to come to your residence hall, to me almost enhances the security of that hall, as long as you're taking responsibility for it.
Okay, Mason?
Just looking at it, I guess a couple years ago, obviously, we didn't have universal access, as keeps getting said. And I'm curious if
we did not have it prior to 2 years ago.
Prior to 2 years ago. So has there been statistical analysis done on the rate of theft, burglaries, and other interactions that have occurred over the past 2 years in comparison to before universal access was introduced? To show if there are trends that either universal access decreases or increases certain factors?
No, not to that level. General observations made, yes.
Have those general observations shown any results then? Have you noticed any trends with universal access over not having it?
Well, as I said at the beginning, and I can't prove this because I don't have the data, but one of my general observations was that there was less propping of doors. So to me, that's a good thing. But when you have one incident, that's all it takes, where people are inside of your community stealing your things. That's enough for me to question the whole concept and what we brought in 2 years ago, and that's what happened. I don't want any intruders in our residence halls. I only want guests that you invite into your halls to be within your community. And you choose that.
Justin?
I come from I come from Miami, where you have every single type of neighborhood possible. You have the extremely wealthy, all the way through to, sadly, the very unfortunate,
Right.
less fortunate. And what I've noticed is that the people who live in a more open environments and say a street where anyone can get to, people take their security very seriously. Whereas in comparison, if you look at a gated community in that area, the general security of each individual house is very low. And sadly, I've seen a trend of something very similar here, but with students in their dorms, in that a lot of my neighbors, a lot of my people in my stack have gained the mentality of, oh, my door is locked, and the only people that can get into the stack are the people who live here. So therefore, I'm gonna not worry about locking my door so much. I'll leave the door open, it's not that big, I'll leave the door propped open up to my dorm while I go to the bathroom for 5 minutes and come back. They don't see it as so much of a problem, so, because they see, universal access is no longer a thing, so the only people that are getting in are the people that I already know. Wouldn't that be extremely counterproductive, considering that students are now going to forego their personal safety because they think that their dorm is protecting them for them, when anyone can still A, piggyback in, B, come in as a guest with the assumption that the person is going to be taking responsibility for them, or C, get in some other way that we haven't thought of? Wouldn't that be bad that they're leaving their doors open, they're leaving them unlocked because they think that they have that false sense of security? And how would you recommend?
First of all,
combating that?
students shouldn't leave their doors open.
I understand, it's terrible.
We advise all students not to leave the doors open.
I
So, that's a choice that you make, unfortunately. Secondly, if, you read our note on Friday when we sent out the notice about all dining halls being accessible again, I think I put in the sentence, please be vigilant about your personal and about your hall and campus community safety. So again, in the educational sense, our attempt is going to be from here on out is to promote that over and over and over. And so you do the right thing and you don't become lax. And it's interesting you mentioned Miami, because that was one of my points of reference when I mentioned another university. I visited the University of Miami at Coral Gables. They have one of the most sophisticated entrance and exiting systems in the residence halls. So,
So at this stage, I think one thing's been made clear, and it's that the process moving forward for Residence Life is that you'll be conducting a review of which students should have access to which clusters, correct?
yeah, I'll give you an example. I wrote some of my colleagues in the administration this afternoon, because I'm concerned about, and there was a comment about ALAC, well, math mentors, and some of you might be mentors. It's a highly successful program, works very well in supporting and assisting our students. And so my question was, and it came back very specifically from the director, and he said, I'd like access for these mentors during these times in these halls for this purpose. It was very specific. So I sent it out to my colleagues and I said, what are we going to do, with this program? And again, that's an example of we're going to continually review access to our halls. We went from one extreme to the other, and now we're building back. And I hope that we can find a way where we can, again, give access, but with appropriate controls.
So my question following that is, what is the process that you will be using to conduct this review, and what factors specifically will you be looking for? I know you've hinted at a few of them and listed a few even.
I'll give you another example. So I get an email from a student that says, I'm not on a dining plan, but I'd like to go to the store in Bar H. So my immediate answer was, he can't have access because we haven't figured this out yet. but we are looking at redesigning access to Bar H. And so those who are on dining plans can go to the dining facility but can't access the residential wing. That would be similar to Blipman. If you go to Blipman now, you can access dining, you can't access the resident floors. So we are looking at changing the configuration there. So again, I sent another email and I said we need to relook at those designs again, because student brings up a legitimate concern. I want that student to be able to go to the store. It's as simple as that. So can we figure it out physically to make that occur without violating the safety of the residents on the wings? So a short answer would be, like, if you have specific concerns for your groups, for things that are being overlooked, what have you, send me an email. Stop by my office. My door's always open. You don't need to schedule an appointment. And tell me what the situation is. And then I'll follow through and see where we can go with it. But again, I don't want to lose sight of whatever we do, we want to make our campus safer.
Thank you.
Shoshana?
Similar to math mentoring and ALAC, did you look at the writing center's late night hours?
No.
So perhaps a student who wanted to have that service late at night, if they set up an appointment, that should be scheduled in their system, and perhaps that could be cross-referenced for limited access for that period of time that they have their appointment scheduled.
Paul?
Oh, yeah, mine was just kind of a quick side note. I live in Polytech, and I didn't get the email you sent out about when Universal Access was closed or when it was reopened for people on meal plans, which I am. So
So you didn't get it Friday afternoon when we sent it out?
No. So I just texted some of the people I live with to check with them if it's a Paul problem or it's a Polytech problem in total. I really need to stop.
I'll check with your AD who lives down there.
Okay.
The queue is open.
Any further questions or comments for Dean Schill?
Alex?
This kind of all stems back from, I guess the security of items. I'm just wondering where a lot of the issues were rising specifically. Were they in rooms or were they in public areas? Just for clarity.
The thefts?
Yes.
The thefts occurred in 2 student rooms. And in fact, when those students came back to their rooms, the intruders were inside their room. We don't want any of that.
The queue is open.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Dean Schill, for coming.
Thanks a lot.
Especially on such short notice.
You have a long agenda. Good luck.
Have a good night. Okay, so next up we have Patrick Assailan from the class of 2018 presenting a project from the Facilities and Services Committee. Marcus, can you work the projector?
I'm gonna remote so they might work, I'm not sure.
Just in case. Is that all? No, not right now. It's on its way.
Chris, do you want to talk about the meeting? Well, it's a prison.
Are you?
It's no problem. Come on.
I'm from Bedford.
Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Patrick Assailan, freshman, class 2018. I'm from Jericho, Vermont.
I live at Bar H, which is probably the reason why I even brought this up. So every day I have to cross Burdett Avenue, and nobody stops for you, ever. I think in the course of my past 2 months here, I think 2 people have stopped for me. And it's so uncommon that it's really a problem. It is dangerous. There and down at the middle and high schools too. So a bit of overview of what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about the problem itself, and then what I did, chronology there, and then possible solutions, and what we're doing now and in the future. Oh, so it's not working. Marcus, could you, or Stephen, do you want to?
Marcus has it.
Okay. Okay. So a crosswalk should be there to serve as a way to ensure the safety of pedestrians, and very rarely does it fulfill that purpose. So that's a problem. And the disrepair and the ignorance, the negligence of this is another problem too. Yeah, just keep going. So what we'd like at the minimum are to solve errors in the season transitions, and I'll talk about that later with the crosswalk on 15th Street between Quad and Union. Meet code requirements, and that's up at Bar H, and then improve the general safety of pedestrian traffic. So the strategies, mainly we're trying to work between, in cooperation between local government, the schools, RPIs here, the administration, and between the middle school and the Troy High School, and then whoever else, relevant officials, companies. And in so doing, it's a multilateral approach. Really the problem is trying to work with the city, because they really don't want to do this, and we see it as a problem that needs to be solved soon. So it needs to come from multiple ways at the same time. So currently, the crosswalks at Burdett Avenue are dangerous, as I said before, and they don't meet code. And the reason why they don't meet code is because to either side of a crosswalk, you're supposed to have a parking buffer or a no parking zone, which would come either in the form of no parking signs or lines on the pavement. And that's not there. You will see it down at Quad, and that discrepancy is something that we need to get solved soon. And the fact that that's just not to code is leverage being used against the city. And the problem with 15th Street is that apparently in the winter, when they removed the in-road sign, according to PubSafe and according to the administrations I've heard so far, when they removed that sign for paving, or for plowing, they put up a sign that says this is not a legal crosswalk. And I talked to Mr. Silva, and he said we're gonna get rid of that because once I talked to the city, they said that doesn't make any sense. A crosswalk depends upon the lines in the ground, not on an in-road sign. And also, Mr. Drescher brought up the fact that the crosswalks at the approach and West Hall are also in disrepair. And we can look at the pictures of those later. So the big problem here is that trying to talk to the city, they don't want to do anything. They don't even want to talk to me. I want to email them, or when I went down there, or try to call them, no response at all. And when it comes to jurisdiction between RPI, it's pretty clear we can't touch the roads, and the city thinks that we could do it if we want to. It really shouldn't work that way. The opportunity, though, the good thing is that RPI's administration definitely favors this project, as well as the local schools. So, main objectives: improve the pedestrian safety at every crosswalk, increase visibility, so lighting, signage, increase the number of drivers that yield to pedestrians, because the drivers have to stop, and that's the big thing. And develop a plan for dealing with this in the future. So, not as a member of the administration, but one could argue that RPI wants to increase the number of people going to ECAP and EdPAC, and one way to do that is to ensure that people crossing the roads or going from point A to point B are safe. They're not going to get hit by a car. So you could argue that, which you use. And so improve crosswalks, greater use and attendance across campus. So one of the big things that I found just talking to students and talking to my RD is that there's a lot of negligence, both by the city and some students. People don't think that, go to the against. People think that nobody's been injured yet, so why will they ever? And if we don't do this at all, we'll save money and we'll save a whole lot of trouble with this. But just because nothing has happened doesn't mean nothing will. That's pretty clear. And safety is the most important thing. We should always work on for that. So the initial problems, as I told you before, I brought the Burdett Avenue crosswalk to the FSC, and then was also brought up with the crosswalk between Quad and Union. So I took those up. After that, I worked on drafting some proposals, just trying to figure out some good arguments as to why we do need to make changes here. Then I talked to PubSafe, and at that time they said obviously the roads are the city's jurisdiction and the city's jurisdiction only. And that was to the point where they thought that the Quad Union crosswalk isn't at an intersection, and so they believe that a crosswalk has to be legal if it's at a corner on a roads. And if it's in the middle of a street like Quad, where it's between two intersections, it isn't legal. But when I went to the city, it was pretty clear that no, that's not true. Where there's a crosswalk, people have to stop there, no matter what. They confirmed the state and federal law, which says that the same thing. And then I was supposed to call them back the next day with more questions about what we could do, what strategies, what steps we have to take, and they were pretty clear that they didn't want to do anything, and they just wouldn't respond. And then I went back to PubSafe. They were very surprised. They're very surprised that the city, that their response, but they're also not surprised that the city didn't want to do anything. And 2 weeks ago, I got a response from the city that said, if RPO wants to do the work to do the upgrades, the city has no problem with that. We're not doing any upgrades or incurring any cost. So the city basically washed their hands of the whole situation, and they handed it back to us, which they can't do. RPI just can't do that. We can't be the ones who are responsible for clearing the roads all the time. It's just not our place. And so PubSafe, at that point, expressed full support of this project. They definitely would like to help us in any way if they could. And they suggested talk with Alex De Silva, which I did next. And he was very appreciative of this work. He also expressed full support. He's going on to Mr. Rounds to talk to him about this. And he also argued that if RPI can't do the work, it has to come from the city. And next. And he said he'd take care of the error on 15th Street. So that's done. So I'm now working on an open proposal, which you have in front of you, that will suit every crosswalk now and for any crosswalk you have to deal with in the future. So originally I had made some very specific ones for Bar H, for Quad, for Approach, West Hall, but now we're gonna have one for all of them. And so on Friday, Kristen set up an appointment with Mr. Dunn, the principal of Troy Middle School, and he also expressed full support of this. Apparently they've been talking about this for the past 12 years, but it's never gone beyond discussion. So he likes to get involved too, administrators as well. There are people that they have there that are professional grant writers, which would be good for us to allocate the funding because we can't pay for it. The city needs to get the money somehow. The only problem with getting money from them would be that their crosswalks that we can improve would only have to be within the school zone, so up near Barton and Quad, or not Quad, Crockett. So we couldn't affect anything down here or Bar H or down Approach or West Hall. And he'd also like the student government to get involved, so to have the kids with us because it's obviously in their interest too. But the problem is their student government won't be elected until the end of November, so we won't be able to see them until then. So now I'm waiting for a response from Mr. De Silva. The open proposal is in front of you. So we're going to continue to evaluate these crosswalks and pursue any lead that we see. I may, if it's looking like we should, I may present this to the City Council on November 6th. So that's it. So these are the pictures of the crosswalks we have. So you can see here the buffer zones, which you won't see up at Bar H. We go there. There isn't an in-road sign, but that's because this is fall. So that's, but just to point out, this is probably the most ideal crosswalk we have here. It's probably the best one. This is the one that's mostly code. There's no crosswalk that's as good as this. I mean, people stop it all the time. And this is Bar H. So we just have these dash crosswalks, the content of crosswalk, as opposed to the ladder crosswalk down here. And you see there's no buffer zone, and there's a car parked right next to them. When I went to the city, the Troy Police Department told me that if somebody's parked there or on the crosswalk, I could have them pull them away or ticket them because they should not be there. There shouldn't be somebody on the crosswalk and have to jump out in front of a car because they can't see the driver, the driver can't see them. So same thing, better view. And so this is down at the middle school, which is very similar, but this would be the place where any improvements would have to come, which could be in the form of changing the colors from white to yellow, which is one solution I thought would be possible, but the city said no. That may have something to do with the fact that we're not in a city or a school zone, which we have to look into that more. Or I looked into getting LED signaling, which would cost a lot of money. I got a quote on that. It's unless we get funding for that, it's just way too much money. So this is down at the approach. So this was back in 2011, and you can see these very clear lines going across, and you can see even it's a raised crosswalk right here. It doesn't look like that anymore 3 years later. It's pretty worn out. And down here at the approach, this was never fixed, and it looks even worse than that. So there's a number of solutions there that need to be addressed, or a number of problems need to be addressed and solutions to be looked at. I think that's it. Yep. So the proposal in front of you, we can look at it if you want to, or any feedback on that, if you guys have read it so far. I'll switch to that.
We will be opening a queue. As usual, raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Patrick will be treated as speaker and can respond to any questions.
Shoshana?
Just a general comment about the crosswalk at the top of the approach, which you had one of the pictures for. That has one of the worst visibility because of the stairs. To approach the crosswalk from either side, you have to go down the stairs, and therefore there's like a hill in your way, so you have to literally peek around the corner. And if the traffic is coming from the south side by Impact, there's a hill, so drivers only have about 50 feet to see you peeking around that corner before you cross. And so I believe that's probably one of the most dangerous crosswalks. I don't know any statistics on people who have been injured or been in incidents at various crosswalks, but I imagine that one's pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. And that's for like LED signaling. You press the button on one side and the lights go on both signs on both sides of the road. That's where something like that would come into effect. And it's funny you bring that up with the hill right there. Up at Bar H, people coming from the tip side of Berta Avenue are accelerating at the crosswalk because they're trying to beat the light. And from the other side, they're coming over a hill, so from both sides, they can't really see the crosswalk and they definitely can't see people.
Jen?
I just wanted to point out that as a frequent driver of both those roads, they're pretty poorly lit, both those crosswalks. And I'm not talking just having the LED lights, I mean like regular lights from the city as well. And I don't know if the ones on the approach, if RPI can do anything about that, because I feel like they have some space on either side of the road where they could maybe light it with just like a floodlight or something, because like Shoshana said, it's nearly impossible to tell if someone's coming down those stairs or if they're standing right behind it. And with the ones on Burdett, I don't know if it would make it any easier, but there's two right in a row in both of those spaces, so I don't know if both are really necessary.
Both crosswalks, you mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, because they're about, they're on either side, they're, I don't know, maybe what, 30 feet apart?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, it would,
Yeah.
there'd be a buffer zone going all the way across.
Yeah.
Yeah. And down at Quad, there's a very good, the floodlights down there make it incredibly easy to see a person there. And I think the wall at the approach are probably a good place to put a floodlight if that's
something
possible, yeah.
Steven?
I just want some clarification on something. You said earlier that the Burdett Avenue crosswalk is not a school zone, or there was like something weird about that?
So, if you're up at on Burdett Avenue, there are yellow crosswalks on the sidewalk, but only in front of the middle schools and high school, which I'm not really sure about. The laws aren't really clear about what's what. So, the yellow crosswalks may only exist in school zones and not outside of that. So that would be the reason why we couldn't have that.
Shauna?
So you know the main approach where it has like the beautiful marble section and then there's like a road type area and then there's more stairs down to Blitman? That pseudo road, is there special laws that there's no markings on that part? Because if that's a road, shouldn't there be some kind of crosswalk drawn in?
Right, so the only place where a crosswalk is implied is at an intersection. So if you were to have a four-way intersection or any intersection where cars are stopped, it's implied that there's a crosswalk right there. And that is actually a legal crosswalk, even if there are no lines there or signage or anything. You can cross there with protection from the law. But you're still at your own risk, anytime.
Tina?
I was gonna ask, I'm trying to think, at Bar H, there's like one on each side going towards Sherry, right?
Yep.
So would you be proposing going to just one that was like wider and more designated, or would you still keep the two?
I don't know how to remove the paint lines from the road, I don't know. I think that might be a good idea because I know people have actually complained about parking for the chapel. If you did put a buffer zone there, people wouldn't be able to park there. So you actually improve the number of parking spaces there because they don't have a designated parking area, or parking lot, or anything. So, but actually the other problem is the bus, because the bus has to park there or stop there, which is another problem unto its own. I really don't know. I haven't actually looked at removing crosswalks instead of.
Is the bus stop on the Bar H side or on?
Going down Verda Avenue, it parks right in front of Bar H. Coming back, it's in front from the chapel, right at the intersection of Sherry. Yeah.
Jen?
With regards to crosswalks at an intersection, near Bar H, isn't that kind of an intersection, or would it only count just a crosswalk that's going, I don't know what the street's called. The one that connects, Sherry, the one that connects to Burdett.
There's an applied crosswalk for
just there.
For Sherry, not
Okay.
on Burdett Avenue. So if you're to cross across Sherry, there is, but cars have to stop.
Yeah.
The queue is open. Kyle?
So, first off, this is very impressive, especially coming from a first year. The work you've put into this is commendable. My question is more related to the wording of the proposal itself. What was kind of the guideline that dictated what's going down on paper here? And so far, what has the process been for actually writing this out?
So at first I had a proposal written more as an essay, and from that I put it down to resolution format. So it's more of an outline of the arguments, actually less of the arguments, like the reasoning, so much as this is what I can point to, this is what I want. So, I mean, is there anything you want to see in there, or it's still...
My question was mostly clarificative, but it's probably not even a word. But I would recommend, as this continues to develop, don't abandon the specific proposals that you've made for Burdett, for Bar H, etc., because those are going to lend a lot of the specifics that'll help drive this forward and help people pay attention to it.
Right, I'm going to add more from a more general perspective on the one you have in front of you. I'm going to add more that focus on those, which will hopefully be useless later on after they're resolved, if they're ever resolved. But for now, I'm just keeping it as open as possible, as per Mr. Silva's wishes.
The queue is open.
I have one final question for you then. Given you've highlighted kind of two later goals for this proposal, one being a conversation with VP Rounds, the other being a possible presentation to City Council. Leading up to those, to prepare for that presentation and to prepare for both of those conversations, and I guess this is kind of a question for the floor as well, what steps do you feel should be taken? What areas do you guys feel this proposal could be fleshed out in, could be made more detailed, and I guess how do you plan to proceed?
Well, first, to wait for Mr. Round's response from Mr. De Silva, so I don't know what's going to happen there. I may never have to, because Mr. Rounds has a lot of connections to the city, so who knows what could happen after that. but a member of PubSafe has suggested they go to the city council, just as a citizen, throw it to them, see what they say for 5 minutes as you get. So for that, if I were to do that, I want to have a much more focused argument showing this is what's happening right now, this is what needs to be done, this is why. What do you think? Is that good or?
Queue is open, if anyone would like to speak.
Any further comments or advice for Patrick?
Yeah, just say I have no idea how the city council works, but maybe, because I know this is just kind of a general thing, like evaluation of all crosswalks, but along with Kyle said, I think it'd be good if you can kind of outline some specifics and maybe prioritize which crosswalks you think really need to be done, because possibly they might not have the funding to do all the crosswalks, but if you could kind of, really pinpoint this needs to be done, that needs to be done, and, possibly propose some solutions specifically, then I think you'd be in awesome shape. Good job.
Spencer?
Did you think of contacting Troy Police Department and see if they have any stats on like how many people they arrest for like blowing through crosswalks, or because I know like driving in Troy is the Wild West, where four-way stops don't mean anything, or yeah. So I don't know if that's like an avenue to take it.
Yeah, no stats. PubSafe would argue that if some people are violating the law, then they can use it as a way to make money off pulling people over there. I do know in the public records that Troy Police Department received just over $30,000 and broke down $14,000 for traffic-related issues, and then the rest is for very specific things within the city. So dealing with these things is something that they've been having big problems with, not so much up here, but down there.
Yeah.
The queue is open.
All right. Well, Patrick, congratulations. You've been doing a great job so far. Patrick will be working in FSC to continue developing this proposal for a final vote. If you're interested in helping out, you can come to Michael's meetings every Tuesday at 5 p.m. in the SGS, or contact either Michael or Patrick. I'll send out both of their emails after this meeting. Nice job. Okay, moving on then, we have two, and Patrick, you can stick around if you'd like, leave, it's up to you. But moving on then, we have two motions today. First and foremost, on the Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate, whereas the Independent Council has been dissolved, amends Article 2 of the bylaws of the Rensselaer Union Student Senate, Article 9.7ai to read, the chair, one representative from each of the Graduate Council, Undergraduate Council, Executive Board, Judicial Board, Interfraternity Council, Panhellenic Council, an independent member appointed by the chair and approved by a majority vote by the committee, one member at large approved by the chair, or appointed by the chair and approved by a majority vote by the committee, and one member at large from the voting membership of the Senate appointed by the Grand Marshal. So moved by Paul E. Laurie and seconded by Joe Venusto. Paul, would you like to expand on the motion?
I got this guy. Paul, Noah, and I were reviewing the RNE bylaws. We noticed something odd that it was still noted that one of the RNE members had to be part of the independent council. Funny thing is, independent council dissolved itself last year. It doesn't exist anymore. That means there's no legislative way for us to fill that seat. We saw the need to just change the bylaws to make it no independent council and just an independent member, someone who's not Greek. So that hopefully clarifies.
All right, queue's open. No comments?
Are there no challengers? Call the
Go.
Wait, I didn't
Oh.
Do we have the wording from beforehand and afterwards? Can we read both of those and just what's the difference?
I don't have paper copy of them because opening flagship takes work. But literally the only Literally the only things that I actually changed were changing the independent council, changing independent council to independent senator and adding the approved by the chair and voted in by the committee, and the member at large to be approved by the committee as well.
Would you like me to read it?
Raise your hand, Shosh.
Point of information, Shoshana, go.
The rule. All right, so our bylaws, committees, part 7. The Rules and Elections Committee consists of a maximum of 10 members. The chair, 1 representative from each of the Graduate Council, Undergraduate Council, Executive Board, Judicial Board, Interfraternity Council, Pan-Hellenic Council, and the Independent Council. 1 member at large appointed by the chair, and 1 member at large from the voting membership of the Student Senate appointed by the Grand Marshal. It literally just changes the section about the Independent Council.
Perfect.
The queue is open.
Any further comments?
Hold on. Hold on. Anyone have any questions right now?
All right, Kyle has me questioning this, and I have no idea because I'm an engineer and I don't know grammar. But it says approved by a majority vote by the committee. He asked me if it should be approved by a majority vote of the committee.
The majority voting is done by the committee, so.
Let's keep to the queue, guys.
I like a better person.
My.
Okay.
Joe.
Technically, it's of the committee, but we can make that friendly and.
Okay, cool.
All right, that's all set. Okay, so the amendment is friendly. Both of those second buys have been changed to of. Do we have any further comments?
A decade from now, will anybody remember what the heck you meant by independent member?
I don't know. Pretty much do we want to add in brackets somebody who's non-affiliated with Greek organizations?
Why don't you just call it a non-Greek?
Because in other places, it's just referred to as the independent senators.
Let's keep this to the queue. Does someone want to propose an amendment?
Justin.
I would like to propose an amendment to the motion to add quotations following in parentheses following independent member to say a member who is unaffiliated with any form of Greek life on campus. Yeah, any form of Greek life.
Is that friendly or not friendly?
Friendly, which is why I wanted to do it myself, so we could skip this.
I don't think that should be friendly.
Should it be unfriendly?
It's wording, people.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to overrule.
Unfriendly.
I'm gonna have to
Okay.
overrule that.
That
Okay.
was withdrawn. We're back. All.
Okay. Point of order. What's the shortest way anybody can come up with to say this?
Non-Greek.
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 Add brackets in behind independent to say non-Greek. Is that like good or?
Yeah, just say non-Greek and keep it simple.
Tina's on the queue.
Tina.
Yes.
Is the definition of an independent laid out in the Constitution anywhere? Because like it's used other places.
Okay.
Like I'm pretty sure like that's a universal term.
Oh, so.
Okay, real quick, point of information, Alex.
Oh no, I don't actually have the information.
Okay, then
It's
never
saying
mind.
It should be defined there and then referenced here in that document.
Yeah, that's what I think it would make more sense to define it in the overall because like there's the issue on Senate and it's gonna come up multiple places. So if we put it in however like where we define what a Greek is, then here is instead of independent.
Any comments on that discussion, Paul?
I just pulled up the Union Constitution, and everywhere in the Constitution it says the independent council, which brings us to previous other issues. But, so may I amend my own, or Joe and I's motion to say after independent? Are you gonna?
Yes, no, you can do that.
To say in brackets a student not affiliated with Greek organizations on campus, or
Okay.
So wait, can you give me the exact wording of what you're amending here? is going into the Senate bylaws, so it has to be precise.
Doesn't say it anywhere.
We haven't done a reading bets yet this year.
I don't have time for your nonsense.
It's good fun. It's good
Seriously,
fun.
I can't find it.
Guess who's not getting friendly this tonight?
I can't find it. Tina.
It's
Independent is
It's not in there. Like anywhere.
It's not
Independent is not listed anywhere.
Normally you get.
Okay, guys.
What's the most problem?
Yes.
You're going so smoothly. The Constitution itself, grammar, and also being the correct way to say it.
Give me a second.
You don't want to know those extra.
So it goes in brackets behind.
Yeah.
What?
I said that's why I said Greek organizations. Hi Mel.
I like that. Mel, are you putting yourself on the queue? There is still a queue.
No, it's just expenses.
Affiliated.
Okay.
Unaffiliated.
Yes.
Right, unaffiliated.
Yes,
instead of
Paul,
non.
I'd like you to take your seat.
What does it say?
All right, guys, listen up. We're still on queue. I'd like order, guys.
Hold on.
Okay, who is next on the queue?
Tina.
Alright, so I have two
Say in
things.
advance.
To keep consistent, and it says one representative, and it also says one member at large, and then it says an independent, so we firmly amend to one independent member?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that's
And then my other thing is to deal with this clause that was written in the middle of nowhere. Can we, like,
That goes in brackets behind the word independent.
rather than putting it in brackets, can we do like the where you like raise it to the one, and then like below it's like one?
Sure.
This is what it is.
Footnote.
You do you.
Yeah,
Okay, so
footnote,
that
thank you.
footnote is so that Tina's second amendment is friendly.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, this footnote will be added to the end of the Senate bylaws.
Okay.
Then Alex, did you have anything to say?
Okay.
Gucci.
The queue is open. Anybody?
Okay, seeing none, we will move to vote. All in favor?
Raise your hand if you're. Thank
Put them up high, guys.
You've got this straight.
Okay, all opposed?
I love the independent council.
Okay, guys, okay. Motion passes 16-1-2. We have a second motion, also submitted by Paul and Joe. The Rensselaer Union 45th Student Senate, whereas being a member of multiple branches of government represents a potential conflict of interest and creates avenues for abuse of power, amends Article 2 of the bylaws of the Rensselaer Union Student Senate, creating Article 2.3 to read, listen up guys, no member of the Senate may simultaneously hold a position on the Judicial Board or the Executive Board other than Senate Executive Board liaison. So moved by Paul, seconded by Joe. Would one of you like to expand the motion?
So separation of power. That's it.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Queue is
just
open.
separating.
Alex.
Hey, you want some?
Is there any reference to like higher positions in extraneous branches?
I'll do a point of info.
Such as
for that.
like class council presidents?
As a point of info for that, the GM and PU may not hold a voting position on any other body.
Okay. But still, it's
Paul, did you want to answer the question?
No, just because these are the
This is within
kind of the three main bodies that are defined in the Union Constitution. It's kind of like senators have to be members of the senators have to be on their class councils, and also just referring to the part of it is the fact that the executive board comes up with the budget, the Senate votes to approve the budget, and if the budget is challenged or something like that happens, then it would go to the J board. So kind of the fact that the process is what stuff tends to be within those three bodies when it's a big thing like that potentially. So just keeping the potential from somebody being crazy and being on all of them.
Okay. Steven?
Do you know of anyone who's like, are we gonna have any problems with people getting grandfathered in, or is there anyone currently holding 2 positions?
Shosh is the Senate e-board liaison.
Wasn't there something about liaisons?
Stick to the queue, guys.
The liaison's the only thing that's left.
Tina?
I can see a little bit more why it's a conflict of interest with the D-board, but I struggle to see how the E-board and the Senate are a conflict of interest, because the E-board's really representing clubs, and the Senate's representing students, so if someone wants to do both, I don't see why they can't.
Note previous budgetary comments.
And there's more, I guess, checks and balances than just the Senate on the E-board. Like, I don't think that the Senate really controls the budget. Like, yes, to a degree, we put an approval on the UAR, but every vote that the E-board makes every week is completely independent of the Senate. We're not affirming all of those votes, so I don't understand why someone couldn't sit on both bodies.
Part of it was to separate those
That
power.
wasn't a question to you.
Then Marcus?
It's gone.
Alright.
I like power.
Then I have myself on the queue. Would this only apply to, per se, the senators on, or that are like sitting senators, and not necessarily committee members or committee chairs?
The way I thought, which probably should be clarified, is it would apply to the senators. Or, yeah, since they're voting members.
Kristen?
I guess I have a point that right now there's an e-board task force that's being put together, and they've asked for senators to be on there, not quite liaisons, because we would have power to make amendments and recommendations. The other thing is that the e-board always asks the grad council to appoint one of their members as our e-board rep. And ideally, it would be someone from our class council, and the majority of our class council is made up of senators. So I just think the grad council would be stretched a little bit too thin for finding more people to fill these places in the future if we didn't have as many people. Or I agree, I don't see why a graduate senator could be on the class council as well as the e-board rep.
Alex?
I guess I feel like there's something like this maybe already in place, or if not, then what is this reference? Like, you said this was movement like 2.03 or something to, what is its relation to the original section that it's?
Where the membership is defined.
And there's just nothing there at all in relations to this subject there?
No, the only place where membership, there's something stated about membership is in the union constitution about the GM and PU not being allowed to be the same person.
Tina?
There was something raised before about if this applies to committee members or not. And I'm gonna put Shoshana on the spot because I know she has the Constitution open right now. But the wording in here is it says no member of the Senate, and members of the Senate are defined in the Constitution as who it is. Do you wanna just read that section so that everyone's, just to kind of like clarify who this would apply to?
Section 1 on the Student Senate. The Student Senate is the chief legislative and policy-making branch of the Union, presided over by the Grand Marshal. The Student Senate shall consist of 26 voting members, 6 senators from the graduate school, 4 senators from each undergraduate class, 2 senators from the Independent Council, 1 senator from the Panhellenic Council, and 1 senator from the Interfraternity Council. So the membership is the voting membership and the Grand Marshal.
So previously we defined it as the voting members of the Senate, so should this read no voting member of the Senate?
The Grand Marshal is not a voting member of the Senate. But
they
he is a
have-
member of
they
the
have
Stick to the
their
queue,
own
guys.
clause, I think, right?
What?
There's their own clause on the Grand Marshal.
The Grand Marshal does have their own section. The Grand Marshal shall be the presiding officer of the Student Senate and an ex officio member of all committees. The Grand Marshal shall be regarded as a leader and the chief spokesperson for the entire union and shall be a non-voting member of the Student Senate. In the event of a tie, the Grand Marshal may count one vote. Any appointments made by the Grand Marshal may be nullified by a majority vote of the entire Student Senate. So the Grand Marshal is a member of the Senate, but not a voting member of the Senate.
Okay, Case.
Sorry.
Then I have myself on the queue. I would like to add the amendment to have it be voting members in addition to the Grand Marshal, not to. So pretty much.
Can you read what you'd like the final wording to be?
No voting member of the Senate, including the Grand Marshal, may simultaneously hold a position on the judicial board or the executive board other than Senate executive board liaison.
Is that friendly?
I'd say no, because the reason I left it out is Article 5, Section 4 of the Constitution says the offices of Grand Marshal and the President of the Union, blah, blah, blah. A student who,
Open up this queue then. While he's doing that,
Right. Sure,
amendment
it's
is.
friendly.
Oh, it's friendly. Okay. So the wording is now no voting member of the Senate, including the Grand Marshal. No voting member of the Senate or the Grand Marshal may simultaneously hold a position on the judicial board or the executive board other than Senate executive board liaison.
So as it stands now, someone could be on all three? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Justin?
I would like to second what the statements made by Tina in that I don't see at all how a member of the E-Board could, being a member of the E-Board and the Senate could cause a conflict of interest. A, for the reasons stated by Tina in that not every vote by the Senate is affected by the E-Board, not every vote of the E-Board is affected by the Senate. B, you are one member of a council of, I think it's 15 members on the E-Board, or you are a senator of the 24 of us. You do not have the ultimate say in that committee by being a member of it. So I don't see how, I understand it with the J-Board, but I don't see how that would be a problem with the E-Board.
Paul?
I have two different points. One is the clause I've been referring to previously in the Constitution is Article 11, which is limitation of office, Section 2, saying the Grand Marshal shall not be a member of the Executive Board, nor any committee thereof, nor shall the President of the Union be a member of the Student Senate, nor shall either be a member of a constituent council of the Senate, nor of any union judiciary body. And the second point I had is, everybody talks about the fact that this is just limiting it to one person, or one person being on both bodies won't have that big of an effect, or one person isn't that large of a deal. The facts are, currently it could allow for all 15 members of the E-Board to also happen to be 15 senators. And second of all, when you're inside the Senate or you're inside the Executive Board and you're in the meetings that we're in every week, yeah, you understand how everything works, you understand how we do things and stuff like that. However, if you're an outside student and we're talking about our image and the way we're perceived by the school, having this large opportunity for a conflict of interest doesn't make sense, because it just allows for a large potential for an abuse of power, or looking like it's just a club, or the Senate and the Executive Board and student government as a whole are just clubs and cliques which are made of the same people and work within themselves. And it just is part of the fact that we need to be aware of the perceptions we can create for ourselves outside of our bodies, and how we need to work to best represent ourselves and address the needs of the students as a whole.
Shoshana?
I just wanted to bring up a point by Kristen. I agree that there are certainly lots of times when the graduate students are stretched thin, but I believe that that is our strength to find diverse opinions, and unfortunately they aren't always available, but that's really where the strength of student government comes in. As Paul mentioned, the Senate does approve the activity fee, which is a concern both to undergraduate and graduate students, but we also approve the executive board membership, which largely creates the body in and of itself.
Anthony?
Yeah, I was going to echo what Paul was saying, that the fact that the GM and PU cannot hold positions based on the Constitution, but since Paul had mentioned that, that's it.
James?
Will the judicial board ever need a Senate liaison? I don't know if anyone could answer that, but I just don't know how the judicial board works.
The purpose of the liaison came about because of the history between the Senate and the executive board. The Senate, years and years and years ago, used to handle the financial aspect, but as our union grew, it was a bit much for one body to handle, so a specialized body was created. That communication has stayed put, so that way the executive board would never be so-called outweighted by any one class or one constituent group, because in theory the Senate should cover everyone being a Senate of equal representation. The judicial board, on the other hand, is only exists out of necessity. They meet as they have cases, and so there doesn't need to be the same level of repeated communication, because in a way they do have to step back from communication so that they can do their job unbiasedly.
Tina?
I just wanted to kind of counter the extreme point that if there were all 15 members of the E-Board were senators, in that unlikely circumstance that there's like 15 superhuman people who can do both, why would that be a negative? Because like if we're approving them, then clearly they're qualified, so if they're qualified, let them serve on both. That's kind of my take.
I just wanted to ask Anthony, since I talked to him before, or throughout the process of creating this motion, and kind of since he's the head of the jury board, his opinion of this idea, or the separation of power.
I think separation of power would be a good thing, just like since this is basically modeled after the U.S. kind of bodies of government, there's a separation of power. You don't expect anybody to be both in the executive branch, the Senate, and the Supreme Court. But as to what Tina was saying as well, if 15 members, if everybody was planning on being on both Senate and E-Board, they could vote themselves in without if they have a majority. Is it 2/3 vote? Or?
Well, for some appointments,
okay.
It's majority 2/3, depends on.
So I mean, they do have a majority vote if it's 26 voting members. That's more than half.
Shoshana?
I just kind of want to ask Kristen, like, general background for the graduates. Has there ever been a time when there wasn't a graduate on the executive board?
So the Graduate Student Council can appoint anyone to the E-Board. They don't necessarily have to be a graduate student. So this year we were able to find a co-terminal or master's? Co-terminal student. So she's not technically in a graduate school, but we felt as though she had the criteria, she met all of our requirements. We thought she was perfectly capable of representing graduate students on the E-Board. That being said, we were hoping that someone from our council would be able to serve on the E-Board and therefore tying, I guess, the information back to the council more easily. That's normally, I think, how the PUs would prefer, is that someone from the grad council serve as the E-Board.
The queue is open. Anthony?
Since we've discovered the clause in the Constitution regarding the limitations of the GM office, should we amend the motion to as previously without the GM?
So Anthony has entertained a motion to amend the motion revoking the language or the grand marshal.
Accepted.
Well, if someone has a motion for it.
Motion and friendly design.
Well, who's on the queue next?
No one.
Okay.
Tina.
So, can we amend to get rid of the grand marshal?
Is that friendly?
What? Is it friendly to get rid of order grant marshal?
Yeah, just so.
And then the other thing is, other than the Senate Executive Board liaison, can we add the word the?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. QMT.
The queue is empty. Anybody?
Do we have any further comments on this?
James?
Do we still have quorum?
We have 17 people.
Yes.
Make sure.
No one leaves.
Well, no, 2 people.
I was about to tackle something.
All right. So seeing no further comments, we're going to move to vote. I will reread the motion because it's been a little while. Whereas being a member of multiple branches of government represents a potential conflict of interest and creates avenues for abuse of power, amends Article 2 of the bylaws of the Rensselaer Union Student Senate, creating Article 2, Section 3 to read, no voting member of the Senate may simultaneously hold a position on the Judicial Board or the Executive Board, other than the Senate Executive Board liaison. All those in favor?
Wait, hold on. Are you raising your hand?
I was distracted.
Okay. Keep them up, guys.
So it's in favor, Martha?
Yeah. Come on, guys. Okay, all opposed?
RPI we can count.
Wait, oh crap. Damn it.
Wait, what?
I counted. We have 18 people. Hold on, we're gonna count the board members real quick. Definitely have some. Guys are both terrible at counting. We have 18 people, we're good. Motion passes 11-7-0. Actually, wait, hold on. I want to review this real quick. Does that pass or no?
It has to be 2/3.
Does that have to be 2/3?
Yeah.
That has to be 2/3.
That's 12.
Okay, wait, we need to. Okay. Motion, thank you for the clarification, Tina. Motion fails.
That's the first motion I've seen fail.
I actually do
I
want.
knew we needed 2/3. I didn't know if we had 2/3.
E-word and G-word were no Senate and A-word should be.
Super majority.
What?
The Senate's
No,
still
it's 2/3 of those
But
questions.
you really want to have especially
For James
for
Rex.
graduates should be moving forward if they want to.
I misvoted because I was.
Enough people to get him in.
Okay,
You can repose the
Justin,
motion.
Justin, go do the thing.
Be like,
So,
sorry, I have to go to the bathroom.
that is going to be all for our motions for the evening.
We'll tackle it another day.
You don't need my ID, you're fine. Just ask for Mary. So we're gonna move on to committee reports. First, R&E, Mel.
We passed the motion. That's it.
What?
Just independent member R&E motion. That's it. We had no meeting this week, or last week.
Okay. Any other updates? All right, Marcus, AAC.
Okay, this multitasking thing is not my thing. Okay. Hold on. I have to, all right, AAC. We're moving forward with our projects as per usual. Contacted a VP of research. We're going to be moving forward in terms of both of our research projects now. We're going to have more of the administration thumbs up, so we're going to use that to help get faculty members on our side and get things done a little bit faster. Mill States, wait, that doesn't matter to you guys. And also the academic syllabi. We're working on the full actual document that will depend further on actually getting the approval from the provost. And that's everybody's first time seeing that elevator open. And so yeah, we're waiting on a response from the provost, and if the provost does not respond in time because we want to get this done before registration, then we'll move on and we'll only have it for part of the campus. Okay, I'm gonna type that.
Real quick, do you have an update on the accreditation committee? You began to mention something.
It doesn't really matter to Senate, but The RPI is going through accreditation. We go through it every 10/5 years. There are certain exams where we go every 5 years. But it's pretty much to prove that we're a school. So we're going through, we're looking at the surveys and feedback processes that are in place within the different departments and parts of the school, and to make sure that everything is up to code, that we're actually trying to improve our education, and lots of surveys are on their way. So that's your version of it. I could go on for like another hour on it, but I don't want to.
Yeah, we'll cut it back for a moment. So, next we have FSC. I believe Joe is reporting for them.
Yes, I am. So let me keep this quick. So FSC, we had no meeting because Tuesday was actually Monday. People had to do their action items. We're meeting tomorrow at 5, be there. HSAC, tomorrow we're meeting at 6, be there. We're be talking about feedback from our meeting with Hospitality Services and what we're going to be doing for our next meeting with Hospitality Services. Be there, done.
Wait, what?
I was like, that deserves
Please be
applause.
gentle to me. This is the
His
first
response
time
was,
doing
please
it.
attend all of the
Please
Either.
attend meetings, that's all you get.
So I think you covered HSAC as well. So on Lexi's behalf for SLC, I guess I'll be covering this a little bit in my report, but SLC members who attend this week's Student Life Pathways program will be excused from the SLC meeting. I'll be mentioning Pathways during my report. Where are you two going? Okay, they're coming back. Guys, stick around. Yes, go get them. Paul's next. Paul's next.
Meanwhile,
moving on, Gabe, WebTech.
Do we still have quorum?
We're not voting on anything.
But you're no longer in,
Hey,
if you're no longer in
yeah.
quorum, you no
This
longer.
week we had a lot of
Do
new
we have
members at
quorum?
our meeting, thanks to Justin who brought some friends along and gave a few talks at ECHOS. So we just did a lot of brainstorming, getting people acquainted with the committee, and hopefully next week we'll move on to project stuff. People had some really good
Yes.
ideas, so we'll see what they want to work on. Maybe I'll just force them into some groups and see where they fall. Hey, Justin. Other than that, we did the shuttle review and everything. We took inventory of what we have, and we're looking into new tracking devices that provide like vehicle diagnostics and stuff, so we can add some new features to shuttle tracking and make it more of like a vehicle like health system almost. Yeah. Other than that, that's all I have.
Any comments for Justin? He was waving.
Could you repeat the second thing that you said after you talked about increased membership?
Yeah, we're looking into new shuttle tracking devices because a few of
Not
them
that.
are missing. Yeah.
Was there something else?
Yeah, that was just about it, really.
Okay, just making sure.
So guys, when you're speaking, talk slowly. Just for Marcus's and my sake, please.
All right, Morgan, Community Relations.
So pretty much what's been happening with us is we got a Facebook page online. We have almost 100 likes last time I looked. I think we were at 93, which was about 3 hours ago. So hopefully by now we've roughly 100. We started on Thursday on that, so that was pretty exciting. Then we're also working on projects for community service and also networking with businesses and having student discounts, like large student discounts to get everyone into downtown Troy and having the experience of the different shops there.
Can you clarify a little on what this page is for?
Okay, so this page on Facebook is called Know Your Neighbors. It's pretty much a way that it collects all the information about Troy that's happening both at RPI and Sage that are open to both campuses. That's going to be about what's happening, and it's just going to be a collection of everything, and it's going to be the one-stop shop for like anything that relates to college students.
Any questions for Morgan? All right, thank you very much. On Tina's behalf, a report for the website focus group. They will be meeting tomorrow at 7 p.m. She didn't give me a location. We can have that out in an update email after this meeting. They're going to be switching between Tuesdays at 7 and Fridays at 4 every week to accommodate different people who couldn't make the various meetings. The topic for this meeting is going to be general content and updates and format for the website. The next meeting is going to be Senate, followed by Executive Board, followed by J-Board and class councils.
All right, come on.
Tomorrow
Give me a
night.
break.
It was emailed out. I'll show you later.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Tomorrow night is in 3602.
Tomorrow night's in 3602. Thank you, Anthony. So if you're interested in any of those, show up tomorrow at 7:36:02 or email Tina or myself. With that, we're going to move on to constituent reports. Shoshana, E-Board. Oh, question?
I have a committee. Should I report tonight?
You're not on the agenda. My
No.
apologies.
I had the meeting today, which is the one time the subcommittee has something.
You were out of the room when you were supposed to give your
Okay,
report.
fine, if everybody doesn't want
We'll get to you. We'll get to you in a second. Jen first.
So we had our first student government communications meeting. We talked about current publicity, and we're going to work on future publicity guidelines, specifically for posting on Facebook and Reddit. We are opening up the Twitter account, and at our next meeting, we're discussing tabling and also how to increase our membership. This week, we're meeting from 4 to 5 p.m. on Wednesday in the SGS library. Next week, though, and this will be our permanent meeting time for the rest of the semester, it'll be Tuesday from 8 to 9. I know it coincides with Web Tech, but it was the best time for all the students interested in the committee. So that's it.
Thank you very much. All right, so now, Paul, we missed your report earlier, student policy.
I met with Dean Smith earlier today. He actually doesn't have the policy since it's apparently being reviewed by the Institute Council and the HR department. So he said that he knows we won't be able to meet the previous November 5th deadline that he wanted, but he hopes that we'll have the physical copy of it in the next 2 weeks. And he wants us to push back the open forum behind when we get the actual copy, so we actually have it there to distribute and stuff. And we have a blank check to share the previous draft that we were given with anybody we want, instead of, keeping it in-house as we previously been told to.
Any comments?
Could you repeat that last part?
We have freedom to distribute current drafts of handbook changes that we've been given.
Okay.
Tentative date for the forum.
We had thought about the 28th, but that may have to change depending on when we know, or the 28th of this month, when we know when we'll have the copy.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Shoshana, E-Board.
The executive board did not meet last week, but going forward, we're going to start budgeting athletics.
Thank you. Kristen, Grad Council.
The Graduate Student Council is having a meeting tomorrow at 1:30 in the SGS. Everyone's welcome to attend. That's about it for now.
All right, thank you very much. James, IFC.
So it's Greek week. Woo! 20th to the 24th. Tuesday has trivia 6 to 8 at Mothers. Wednesday, kickball 2 to 5. You don't have to write this down, Marcus.
Oh, I wasn't trying.
Wednesday, kickball 2 to 5 p.m. at the softball field. Thursday, the Greek god and goddess reveal prizes, and there's a movie on RC's lawn from 6 to 9. And then November 15th is Greek Service Day.
Thank you. Morgan, Pam?
I've got nothing else other than what James just said.
All right, so we're gonna wrap up with my report. First, Family Weekend is this weekend. As many of you may know, there are gonna be events all week, so check them out. We have everything from like family dinners to fraternity events to tours of various campus buildings and like open house in some of the classrooms. There's going to be an RPI Players Show, Almost Maine, this Friday at 8 p.m. and a hockey game versus Bentley. I believe that's also this Friday at 7. So check any of those out. Also, GMPU brunch. I sent an email out earlier this week. Well, last week. It's Sunday at 9 a.m. By a show of hands, who here is attending?
How are you guys not coming for the free food?
Who has said that they cannot attend?
It's my birthday that weekend.
Who has already said that they cannot attend?
Did you not read about 30 emails?
I never said I can't.
Who has not got this email? Like, who did not have a chance to respond yet?
Can we still like?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm still working out the details.
I believe so.
Okay. Can you guys talk to me right after this?
You try.
All right. I need the final numbers by today. We were supposed to have them Friday. I've given an estimate, but after today, it's going to be difficult to get any of you guys in as we have limited seats under our budget. So figure that out ASAP. I'll talk to you four afterwards real quick. Conrad?
I found out today that brunch is actually sold out. So that's good. It's going to be really well attended. I don't know what I'm saying. That's a mistake.
It will. Pretty good. Aaron and I are meeting tomorrow to determine seating, etc. So keep you posted. So I have one final thing that wasn't on the agenda. We are actually celebrating a birthday today in the Senate. So round of applause for Joey V. In celebration of Joe's birthday and a rather long, rigorous, and at times dysfunctional meeting, I would like to present this cake to the Student Senate. I paid for it out of pocket, so you all better eat it. We have forks and plates up here, so feel free to get some on your way out. Comments?
What kind of cake?
It's an ice cream cake. Oh, it's good. It's half vanilla, half chocolate. A little bit of fun for everyone. We do not need a motion for cake. Cake is on the house. Any further? Do we have any new business? Questions from our press? All right, meeting adjourned.